So, first final of the day, it is Junior Max, final number 1. Line-up is as follows. Mads Ries is on pole alongside Mike van Wolf from the Netherlands. James Wharton and Karl Marcusset, row 2. Jerzy Spinkovits and Colin Kerzani, row 3. Jan Pokos, Robert De Haan, row 4. Zen Rudenberg and Herbert Andreas, row 5. Christian Mansell and Bens Valent, row 6. De Oliveira and Pauls, row 7, which means that the Belgians got a little bit of work to do this morning. Moray and Castro, row 8. Hannen and Hensen, row 9. Lardenoij and Edquist, row 10. Fury and Machiels on row 11. Ballas-Valent and Vigor Hjorvard, row 12. Philip Yannick, Georgie Zwain, row 13. Rasmus Valsten and Philip Pust, row 14. And last but by no means least, Astrid Amlöf from Sweden and Sasha Klavedetscha from Switzerland. So 30 competitors, 15 rows. And we will have 11 minutes plus 1 additional lap of racing action here at Speedwell in Austria for round 3 of the championship. And Van Vugt leads the standings coming into this round with the likes of Kerzani and Pauls in the hunt for the overall title, but the top 3 will still get a Rotax Max Challenge Grand Final ticket at the end of the season. So now the front 2, which is Mads Ries and Mike van Vugt, will start controlling the pace. There were discussions during the team boss meetings last night to control the start procedure a little bit more firmly and fairly, which means allowing everyone to get the same sort of even start when we go green very shortly. We're about to get finals day underway here in Austria for round 3 of the 2018 racing season. They come around the penultimate turn, around the left-hander, which puts them on the start-finish straight, and we go green for the first time on finals day into turn 1, and it looks like Mike van Vugt has already slipped down to 4th position. So a bit more of a cleaner start from the entire field, and we've got carts already off. At least 2 or 3. One's gone very wide, going onto the back straight for the first time of asking. And it's still 2, 3 abreast going on the back part of the far side of the track. So, leading at the moment, it is Mads Ries. Looks like James Wharton has also made moves up to 2nd position. You'll have the likes of Van Vugt up there as well. Looks to be in 4th and is challenging for 3rd already. So, Spinkovits has already jumped into 3rd ahead of the current points leader, but at the front of the field and starting to slightly pull away to around the tune of half a second. It's the pairing of Mads Ries in the 3.99 and Australia's James Wharton in the 3.13. They've got a half-second gap between themselves. And there's a few more tries at overtakes there. So 3.47, Colin Kerzani getting himself well stuck in there. Corby Powell's around sort of the lower part of the top 10, or maybe just outside. As we've got one kart at the back part of the field going very slowly indeed. About to start lap number 2 very shortly, and Mads Ries and James Wharton will very shortly have Jerzy Spinkovits and Mike van Vugt in close proximity. Top 4 separated by just over 0.8 of a second. And you can see how quickly Spinkovits and van Vugt are going to be closing up on the 2 leaders. You can see the gap being decimated as we speak. And they're pulling a little bit further away from the likes of Karl Marcusset, Jan Pokos and Colin Kerzani, who complete the top 7. So 9 minutes plus 1 additional lap to go in the first of the Junior Max finals here in Austria. Top 15 score points towards this season's efforts, with the top 6 scores from each driver, with 2 drop rounds being put towards their championship points tally at the end of the season at Wackersdorf later on this year. But the gap between Wharton and Ries is now down to 0.175 of a second. There's still a gap of around half a second between Wharton and Spinkovits. Down in 3rd position, as you can see how different lines are being taken. There's a nice move up the inside by Colin Kerzani on Jan Pokos for position. That is for 6th place. Wharton's run on the back bumper of Mads Ries. But look who is coming along with them. Jerzy Spinkovits goes very wide and allows Mike van Vugt to close up on him as they come into the final part of the track. Karl Marcusset now in 5th. Colin Kerzani in 6th. And Jan Pokos now down into 7th position. Gap still very much the same, around about 0.2 of a second between Mads Ries and James Wharton in 2nd. So it's 25 points for a win, as Van Vogt is getting ever closer to the back bumper of Jerzy Spinkovic, and he goes up the inside of the number 325. Spinkovic looks over his right shoulder, does not affect the switchback manoeuvre that could have seen him go past the Dutchman to regain third place. But whilst this has been happening, Karl Marcuse is now closing fast. He's about a cart length and a half behind Jerzy Spinkovic, as we now have just under 7.5 minutes to go, plus an additional lap in his first Junior Max final. Closely fought as ever in this category. They might be young, but they are very competitive and very hard charging. So James Wharton again is coming alive in this season. We're in the penultimate round of the championship itself, and you can just see how different lines are being taken, as it looks like, well, there's another move up the inside. Karl Marcuse was being pressured by Colin Kerzani for position. So Kerzani must have just gotten ahead for a fraction, and say just returned the favour, went back up the inside on the far side of the track as the leaders come through the infield section. So leaders now starting to pull that gap. It was 9/10 of a second last time around between Wharton and Van Vogt, and it is now a second. So the two leaders making a getaway, trying to break away from the rest of the pack. So Madslis leads from James Wharton. Mike Van Vogt rounds out the top three, ahead of Spinkovic, Kerzani, Pocos, De Oliveira, who started in 13th, now up into 8th place. So nice work by the Portuguese driver who's racing with Dan Holland racing this year. Zen Rudenberg and Herbert Andreas also have made some moves up the field. Andreas actually is where he qualified for the final in 10th position. Zen Rudenberg also pretty much where he was when we went racing 4 minutes ago, or 5 minutes ago. So about to hitch the halfway distance in terms of time application in this first Junior Max final. And there's a nice little battle there with Linus Henson already up from 13th. Well, no, he was he's a little bit further down the order, it looks like. Linus Henson started 18th. He's now in 11th position. So nice work by the German to make up 7 places as we now hit half race time distance here in the first Junior Max final. Other drivers that have made moves, also Leighton Fourie from South Africa up into 14th. Robert de Haan up into 15th. Haanen is out. Castro out. And also Bensvelint, who started in 12th position, also out. So 3 retirees on the very first lap. That was the altercation that we saw just on the exit of turn 3, heading onto the far side of the track. De Haan now also getting past Fourie for 14th position. I spoke with Leighton's dad a bit earlier on, late last night and also this morning. It's a learning experience for the young South African, qualifying pretty well in terms of what is an ultra-competitive Junior Max field here. So 4 minutes 40 plus 1 additional lap to go in the first of 2 Junior Max finals we have here in Austria. Madslis continues to lead by nearly 0.3 of a second from James Wharton. Van Vogt has closed the gap somewhat. He's now about 0.7 of a second behind. He took a 1/10 and a half out of James Wharton on that last lap. Fastest lap of the race, however, is being held by Holland's Colin Kerzani in the 3:47, who is running with Jerzy Spinkovic in the 3:25, so that's 4th and 5th. So they are battling with that, with Pocos, De Oliveira and Herbert Andreas having got past Zen Rudenberg on the last lap. Georgi Zuane also making moves up the track, up the field. He started 26th, he's now 23rd. So other drivers that have posted their best laps of the race so far: Spinkovic, Pocos, Mansell, Machiels, Hjorvard, Edqvist, Zuane, Omlof as well. So the gap is staying pretty much the same between Madslis and James Wharton, just over 0.3 of a second. Van Vogt takes about 0.5 of a second out of the Australian on the last lap. Pocos takes nearly a 1/10 of a second out of Karl Marcuse, as Robert de Haan is no longer competing in this heat, it looks like. So Robert de Haan, the 3:21, having another weekend to forget here in Austria. So the gap now extends between Madslis and James Wharton to just over 0.4 of a second. And Van Voogd takes just over a tenth out of the Aussie yet again. And the Dutchman posts his best lap of the race so far. Linus Henson now up into the top 10. So the treble 3 from Germany now up into the top 10. Good work by Linus Henson, despite that crash. When Oliver and I were having a look at the pre-grid this morning, we saw a lot of drivers that have switched to new tyres for the finals, unlike Linus Henson. This is a strategic call from the German. So he's gone on old rubber, and I think he's going to put a new set on before final number 2 a little bit later on. So the way that he's trying to score some good points as Kotaro Murai gets past Kobe Pauls, of all people, in 12th position. So the 3:27 now gets past the 3:22. 2 minutes plus an additional lap, so that gives us around probably about 4 or 5 laps of racing still to go. The gap between the two leaders, Mads Ries and James Wharton, now up to over 0.6 of a second, whereas Van Voogd is edging ever closer to the Australian. So Van Voogd is looking at getting a consistent points haul in this race, and I have a strategic feeling here that the Dutchman might be trying to go for a win. He's taken nearly, well, just over 1.5 out of the Australian on the last lap. We're now on to lap number 13. 90 seconds plus 1 additional lap to go here in the first Junior Max final. Top 10 at the moment. It's Ries, Wharton, Van Voogd, Spinkovits, Kezani, Zai, Pokos, De Oliveira, Andreas and Henson. So Philip Yannick has got past Sven Ladenoij for 21st, as has Vidgot Edquist got up into 20th now. 60 seconds on the clock to go, plus 1 additional lap. That'll give us around 3 laps of action here. As I've just seen, Wharton and the ever-present Mike Van Voogd is now on the back bumper by about, well, near enough by about a couple of car lengths and a half, as they come through this very bumpy part of the track on the far side. You can just see how much Van Voogd has just been eating into that gap over the last 3 or so minutes. So they're now in the infield part of the track. 25 on the clock, plus 1 lap to go. So 12 to go on the clock. There's going to be time for this and 1 additional lap, as the leaders now are already into turn number 3. So that's Ries from Wharton, Van Voogd. That's your top 3, separated by just over a second. So the grid positions will be decided for their finishing positions in final 1, following any post-race penalties, if there are any issued by our race stewards and race control. Pauls and Furi have now got past Kotaro Murai, so Kobe Pauls now back up into 12th. He has got, so that means he will have some points on the board. It might be just about damage limitation in the first final, but then to have a bit more of a chance through the... So we now have the final lap board being shown to Mads Ries, James Wharton and Mike Van Voogd, all 3 of them separated by just over a second. And Robert De Haan has got his way past back Kotaro Murai for 14th position. So top 15 will score, as we are now in the infield part of the track for the final time with our 3 leaders. Mads Ries, who took a heat win yesterday afternoon. Had a good chat with Oliver, our man in the pits, yesterday after his convincing win, as we now come round to the final couple of corners. And round the left-hander comes Mads Ries to win final number 1 Junior Max ahead of James Wharton and Mike Van Voogd. Kezani nips Spinkovits at the flag by about nearly 0.3 of a second. So that rounds out the top 5 ahead of Karl Marcos Jan Pokos. Other point scorers, so 8th was Guilherme de Oliveira, Herbert Andreas, Linus Henson, Zen Rudenberg, Corby Pauls all the way down in 12th place, ahead of Leighton Fourie. From South Africa, Robert De Haan and Kotaro Murai are your points finishers for final number 1 for the Junior Max division. But what a good job by Mads Ries from pole position, wins Junior Max final number 1. The rest of the finishing order is as follows: Christian Mansell in 16th, Ballas Valint in 17th, ahead of Jeff Michiels. Vilgot Edquist, Vigor Hjorvard, Philip Jennick, Sven Ladenoij, Georgie Swain, Rasmus Wallsten, Astrid Amlöf, Sasha Klavedecha, with 3 other drivers not making the finish here in this particular race.